The most feared man in Seoul had not felt anything real in 2 years. Not since the night his little brother took a bullet in a cold parking garage, a bullet that had his name on it. Every Friday after that, Manshik came to the same quiet restaurant in Itaewon, same corner booth, same 2 glasses of soju, same empty drive home to an apartment that echoed. He wasn't living, he was just repeating, filling time until time ran out. 104 Fridays of pure silence. That was when Patricia came through the kitchen door. She was moving fast, way too fast, carrying a wide tray stacked with empty bottles and bowls from a table across the room, clearly taking a shortcut she had no business taking. She didn't see the booth. She didn't see him. She hit the edge of his table with the corner of the tray, and the full glass of soju went sideways, clean off the table and straight down the front of his jacket. Cold liquid spread across expensive black fabric in a wide, dark stain. The tray rattled but stayed in her hands. Barely. Every person in that restaurant went completely still. Jay stopped moving in the kitchen doorway. Old Mr. Choi turned from behind the counter with the kind of face a man makes when he is trying to calculate how bad a situation is going to get. The whole restaurant stopped breathing. Patricia looked at the stain. Then she looked straight at him. This big, tattooed, silver-haired man that half of Seoul was terrified of, and she did not run. She did not shake. She set the tray down on the nearest table with careful hands, grabbed the folded cloth from her apron pocket, and said, out loud, calm as anything, "Oh no. Did any of it get through to your shirt? Oh no. Did it get your shirt too?" No shaking. No begging. Just a napkin and an honest face. Manshik hadn't felt surprised in 2 years, but he felt it now. If you want to see what happens when the most dangerous man in Seoul meets the one person who refuses to be afraid of him, stay with me, subscribe, hit the like button, and comment. This one is worth it. Manshik had just set his phone down when it happened. No warning. No sound before the sound. Just a hard bump against the edge of the table, and then cold, spreading fast across his chest, soaking through the jacket, through the shirt underneath, all the way to the skin. He looked down. The soju glass was on its side. The stain was wide and dark against the black fabric, still spreading at the edges like it had somewhere to be. The restaurant went silent the way a room goes silent when something bad is about to happen. Jay froze in the kitchen doorway. Old Mr. Choi turned from the counter with his mouth slightly open. The 2 men at the table near the window stopped eating and looked at the floor instead. The way people look away from accidents they don't want to be involved in. Nobody moved. Nobody except her. The woman who had come flying out of the kitchen with a tray full of empty bowls and bottles was already reaching into her apron pocket. She set the tray down on the nearest surface without looking at it, pulled out a folded cloth, and leaned toward the jacket like the most natural thing in the world was to start dabbing at a crime lord's chest. "Oh no," she said. Not a whisper. Not a squeak. Just a normal voice, slightly frustrated, the way you sound when you knock your own coffee over on a Monday morning. "Did it get your shirt too?" She was young. Short, natural hair, dark eyes, deep brown skin still flushed from moving fast in a hot kitchen. Her uniform, white shirt, black suspenders, had a small grease mark near the collar that said she had been working hard all night. She was dabbing at his jacket with total focus, like the stain was the only problem in the room, and fixing it was completely within her power. Manshik did not move. He just watched her. In 2 years, every person who had made a mistake near him had done one of 2 things. They ran. Or they folded. Eyes down, voice small. Sorry, 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 until the word lost all its meaning. Fear did that to people. He had seen it so many times it had stopped registering as anything other than background noise. This woman was doing neither. She looked up and met his eyes, actually met them, held them, and said, "I'm really sorry. The kitchen door sticks, and I thought I could cut through, but clearly that was." She glanced at the stain and winced slightly. A bad idea. Then she went back to the jacket. Mr. Choi arrived at the table, looking like a man watching a building fall in slow motion. The Korean that came out of his mouth was fast and sharp and aimed entirely at Patricia. Manshik raised one hand. Choi stopped. She keeps her job, Manshik said quietly. He picked up his phone, set it face down again, stared at the table for a long moment. He didn't understand why he said it. He said it anyway. He told himself he came back because the restaurant was convenient. Same neighborhood, same quiet street, same owner who knew how to leave a man alone. There was nothing unusual about returning to a place that worked. It was practical. That was all. He arrived the second Friday at the same time, through the same side door, and sat in the same corner booth with his back against the wall and both exits in view. Mr. Choi appeared with the soja bottle before Manshik had even fully settled into a seat. No words. No eye contact held too long. Just the familiar sound of the bottle meeting the table and the soft retreat of footsteps. The routine was intact. Then Patricia came around the corner. She was walking this time, not flying, carrying his glass on a small tray with both hands and the focused expression of someone who had made a personal promise to themselves. She set it down in front of him without spilling a single drop, straightened up, and gave a small bow that was just formal enough to be respectful and just slightly too cheerful to be serious. No crashes tonight, she said. I want that on record. Manshik looked at her. She pulled the small notepad from her apron like she was ready to get to work. Jay made a new version of the gamjatang today. Pork bone soup. He's been working on the broth for a week, added something with the doenjang, and I don't know what he did exactly, but it's the best thing I've eaten since I got to Seoul.
She paused.
I think you should try it. He had ordered the same meal every Friday for 2 years. Grilled mackerel,
Rice.
kimchi on the side. It was simple. It was predictable. It required no thought and no decision and nothing from him except showing up. He looked at the notepad in her hand. Just the gamjatang, he said. Something crossed her face. Quick, genuine, like she hadn't fully expected it to work. She wrote it down before he could change his mind and disappeared back toward the kitchen without making a big deal of it, which he appreciated more than he expected to. The soup came out 20 minutes later, steam rising off the surface, the broth a deep reddish brown, a thick pork bone sitting in the center like it belonged there. He ate slowly. The broth was rich in a way that sat warm in the chest. Heavy but not heavy. The kind of food that reminded you that you had a body, and the body needed something real. He finished all of it. He left the cash under the empty glass the same way he always did and walked out through the side door into the cold Itaewon street. The city moved around him the way it always did. Loud, indifferent, lit up in every direction. He came back the following Friday. It was practical, he told himself. That was all it was. 8 Fridays passed like that. Not all at once. Slowly, the warmth comes back into a room that has been cold for a long time. So gradually, you almost don't notice until one day you realize you stopped shivering. Patricia never sat down. She was always moving, always working, always appearing at the booth for just a few minutes between tables with something new to say. Manshik never invited her to stay longer. He never had to. She just talked the way some people talk, easily, like breathing, like silence was something to be filled rather than protected. She told him about the Seoul subway system and how she had ended up on the wrong line 3 times in 1 week going to the same place. She told him about the old woman on the 3rd floor of her building, Mrs. Beck, who left containers of food outside Patricia's door every other morning without knocking, without explanation, without any apparent interest in being thanked. She told him about her Korean lessons and the specific sounds her mouth refused to make no matter how many times she practiced, and she demonstrated one of them right there at the booth, badly enough that Jay heard it from the kitchen and laughed out loud. Manshik did not laugh, but something in his face shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. He noticed somewhere around the 4th Friday that he was listening. Really listening. Not the way you listen when you are waiting for someone to stop talking, but the way you listen when the words are actually landing somewhere inside you. He had forgotten what that felt like. He hadn't realized he missed it. On the 8th Friday, the restaurant was quieter than usual. A cold night, Only 2 other tables were occupied. Patricia had finished her last order and was leaning against the counter near his booth, scrolling through her phone with one hand and eating a small bowl of rice with the other. "I've been learning this," she said, mostly to herself. She pressed play. The song came out of the phone speaker, soft and a little tinny, but clear enough. An old Korean ballad, the kind with a melody that moved slowly, like it had nowhere urgent to be. A woman's voice, low and aching, the words drawn out long. Manshik went completely still. He knew that song. Sujin used to play it on his phone in the car with the volume too loud, singing along to the parts he knew and humming through the parts he didn't. He played it at their mother's birthday dinner one year and got embarrassed when she cried. He had it on a playlist he never deleted, on a phone that no longer existed, belonging to a person who no longer existed. Patricia was watching the screen, mouthing a few of the words she had learned, completely unaware. She did not know. He did not tell her. He just sat with it, the song filling the quiet room, something cracking open slowly in his chest like old wood giving way, and he let it. He asked her on a Thursday by text, which surprised even him. "My driver will be outside Sura at 10. If you want to walk after your shift." He did not explain why. He did not say where. He stared at the message for a moment after sending it, then put the phone down and went back to work like it was nothing. Like he sent messages like that all the time. She replied 4 minutes later. "Okay, just that." No questions. The Han River at night was wide and dark and lit up on both banks with the kind of light that made Seoul look like it was showing off. They walked along the path without any particular speed, hands in pockets, the cold coming off the water in slow waves. Patricia had changed out of her uniform into an oversized jacket that was clearly not warm enough for the weather, but she wasn't complaining about it. She talked for a while about small things. The restaurant. Jay teaches her how to properly taste broth. Mrs. Beck left what appeared to be an entire pot of doenjang jjigae outside her door that morning with a note Patricia couldn't fully read. Then, after a stretch of silence, she asked for it. "Why do you always come alone?" Manshik kept walking. The water moved beside them. Somewhere across the river a bridge glowed orange against the dark sky. "I used to come with someone," he said. She didn't push. She just walked beside him and let the answer be what it was. He didn't plan to invite her upstairs. It happened the way things happen when you're not paying attention to your own decisions. She was saying something as they reached the building and he held the door, and she walked through it, and then they were in the elevator, and it seemed strange to say goodbye in a corridor. The apartment was large and quiet and not very warm. She looked around the way people look at a place when they are trying to understand the person who lives in it, carefully, without being obvious about it. Then she stopped. On the shelf near the window, between 2 books and a small clay dish, was a framed photo. 2 men, younger, standing outside somewhere bright, both laughing at something outside the frame. The taller one had the same jaw as Manshik, the same set to his shoulders. The shorter one was leaning into the laugh with his whole body. "Who is that?" Patricia asked. Manshik looked at the photo for a moment. "My brother," he said. "Sujin." He told her then. Not everything. Not all at once. But the shape of it, the parking garage, the bullet, the 2 years of Friday nights that were never really about the food or the ritual or the soju. Just about surviving another week without his brother in it. Patricia sat down on the couch next to him when he finished. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't say anything. She just stayed, close, quiet, present, and let the silence be something other than empty for the first time in 2 years. That was when everything shifted. Ryung didn't knock. He never knocked. He just appeared in the doorway of Manshik's office the way he always did, quiet, straight-backed, with the particular stillness of a man who had learned a long time ago to control what his face did before his mouth opened. He was holding an envelope. "These were left at Sura this morning," he said, "between the front door and the outer gate. Someone put them there before Choi arrived." He set the envelope on the desk and stepped back. Manshik opened it. Inside were 6 photographs. All of Patricia. One outside her apartment building, taken from across the street. One near the subway entrance 2 blocks from Sura, mid-stride, jacket pulled close against the cold. One through the restaurant window, blurry at the edges but clear enough in the center, her laughing at something Jay had said, completely unaware she was being watched. The last one was her and Manshik, walking along the Han River, side by side, close enough that the message was obvious to anyone looking. There was a note folded underneath the photos. For words, handwritten, no signature. The dragon found something soft. Manshik set it down on the desk. He looked at the photographs for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he stacked them neatly, put them back in the envelope, and placed it to the side. Ryung spoke carefully. You know what this is. I know what this is. Then you know what the right move is. Ryung paused. End it, before it becomes a problem that can't be managed. The office was quiet. Outside, the city moved and hummed the way it always did, indifferent to everything happening inside this room. Manshik had given that same advice to other men more times than he could count. He had watched those men hesitate, and he had watched what the hesitation cost them. He knew better than anyone in this city how attachment worked in his world, what it looked like from the outside, what it offered to people who wanted leverage, what it eventually took from the person foolish enough to have it. He knew all of this. Double her security, he said. I want someone in her building. Someone near the restaurant. Rotation every 12 hours. Nobody she can make. Ryung was quiet for a moment. Manshik. She doesn't find out. He picked up his phone. The conversation was over. Make sure they're good. Ryung left without another word. Manshik sat alone in the office with the envelope on the corner of his desk. He told himself it was a practical decision. Removing her now would create questions, and questions created complications, and this was simpler.
Cleaner.
He was managing the situation. He almost believed it. Almost. But the photo of her laughing through the restaurant window was still clear in his mind, and the thing sitting heavy in his chest had nothing to do with practicality at all. He already knew that. He just wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. The call came on a Tuesday at 8:47 in the morning. Not Ryung. Not a number he recognized. Just a voice, flat, unhurried, the kind of calm that belongs to men who have done this before and found it easy. Baek Hyun sends his regards. The woman is safe.
For now.
You have until tonight to confirm the Busan route transfer or that changes. The line went dead. Manshik stood in the middle of his office for 3 seconds. Then he called Ryung. Find her. It took 4 hours. A warehouse on the south side of the city, near the old port district where the buildings were wide and low and nobody asked questions about the kind of traffic that moved through at night. Ryung confirmed it just after noon with 2 words and a pen on a map. She's inside. They went in 8. Manshik and Ryung, and 6 others who had been with him long enough to move without being told twice. No sirens. No announcement. They came in from 3 sides in the dark of the early evening, the warehouse lights cut from the outside junction box before anyone went through a door. The inside dropped to black. Manshik moved through it the way he had moved through dark rooms before, low, fast, reading the space by memory and sound. He could hear voices toward the back, 2 men reacting to the sudden darkness, the scrape of boots on concrete. Ryung's team handled the noise. He kept moving. He found her by the faint light coming through a high window on the east wall. She was in a chair, wrists tied behind her, ankles bound. A cut above her right eye had dried dark against her skin. Her head came up the moment she heard him, and her eyes found his across the dark room. She did not cry. She looked at him, at whatever was in his face right then, all the things he wasn't saying, and she shook her head slowly. A warning. A quiet instruction. Don't do whatever you're thinking. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Don't let them see what this is. He crossed the room and crouched in front of her. His hands found the rope at her wrists and worked it loose in the dark, fast and certain. Her hands came free. She didn't make a sound. I've got you, he said. That was all. She grabbed onto his jacket with both hands and held on, not panicking, not falling apart, just holding on the way you hold something you were afraid you might not get back. He put one arm around her and stayed still for a moment, just a moment, his head bowed over hers. The warehouse was quiet now. They both knew, without saying it, that something had moved between them that could not be moved back. Whatever line had existed before tonight was gone. There was no careful distance left. There was only this, her hands in his jacket and his arm around her shoulders, and the understanding, settled and permanent, that he would burn the whole city down before he let anyone touch her again. She woke up to gray morning light coming through curtains she didn't recognize. It took a few seconds. The ceiling. The weight of an unfamiliar blanket. The faint sound of the city outside doing what the city always did, indifferent and constant. Then it came back, not all at once, but in pieces, the way difficult things return. The tray.
The chair. The dark.
His voice low and certain in her ear, saying, "I've got you." She sat up slowly. Her wrists were sore. The cut above her eye had been cleaned and covered with a small bandage, done carefully, which meant someone had tended to it while she slept. The bedroom was quiet and plain and expensive in that way that meant nobody had decorated it on purpose. Just good furniture. Nothing on the walls. The shelf near the window with the 2 books and the clay dish and Sujin's photo still catching the morning light. She looked at that photo for a moment. Then she got up. Manshik was in the kitchen. He was standing at the counter with a cup of coffee, still dressed, jacket gone, but everything else the same as the night before. He looked like a man who had not slept. He probably hadn't. He turned when she came in. His eyes went to the bandage above her eye the way they had gone to it every few minutes in the car the night before, quick, involuntary, like checking a wound he felt responsible for. She pulled out a chair and sat down at the kitchen table. For a moment neither of them said anything. The city moved outside the window. Somewhere below, a car horn sounded and faded. "I know what you are," Patricia said. Not an accusation. Just a fact, laid flat on the table between them. "I'm not stupid, and I'm not pretending. I've known for a while what kind of man sits alone in a private booth every Friday night with an owner who looks scared to breathe wrong." She looked at him steadily. "Last night just made it impossible to keep pretending I didn't know." Manshik didn't say anything. "I'm not going to pretend I'm okay with everything," she continued. "I'm not. There's a lot I'm probably never going to be okay with." She paused. "But I'm also not leaving. So you better start being honest with me. All the way honest, because I'm not built for half-truths." The kitchen was very quiet. Manshik had been asked for many things in his life. Loyalty, silence, results, fear from people who couldn't offer anything else. Nobody had ever sat across from him in the plain morning light and asked him simply to be honest. Like it was the most reasonable request in the world. Like he was capable of it. He didn't know what to do with that. He set his coffee down. "I'll try," he said. 2 words. Small and unpolished and completely unguarded. But he meant them, and Patricia could hear that he meant them, and that made them the most he had promised anyone since the night he lost Sujin in that cold parking garage 2 years ago. 3 months moved differently than the 2 years before them. Not slow and hollow. Not the kind of time you endure. It moved the way time moves when something is actually happening inside it. Full. Sometimes difficult, occasionally frightening, but real in a way that made the previous 2 years feel like a long gray dream he had finally woken up from. Patricia met Ryung on a Wednesday afternoon in early spring. Ryung shook her hand, said almost nothing, and spent the rest of the meeting watching her the way he watched everything, carefully, without expression. Afterward, he told Manshik she had good instincts. From Ryung, that was a considerable thing to say. She learned the rules the way she learned most things, by paying attention, asking direct questions when she needed to, and knowing instinctively which rooms required silence and which ones she could speak in. She made mistakes sometimes. She corrected them without drama. The men around Manshik, who had expected someone decorative and easy to dismiss, adjusted their expectations quietly and without being asked to. The situation with Beck Hine resolved in a way nobody had predicted. It was Patricia who suggested it, offhand, over breakfast, the way she suggested most things that turned out to matter. What if you brought me to the next meeting? Not to say anything.
Just to be there.
Manshik had looked at her for a long moment. Ryung, when told, said nothing for several seconds and then said it was either very smart or very dangerous. It turned out to be the first thing. Beck Hine looked across the table at a man who had something worth protecting and made a different calculation than he had made before. The route stayed. The conversation ended. The problem slowly closed. The rooftop restaurant in Mapo had no sign and no menu. You had to know it existed to find it. Manshik had known it since he was 12 years old. He and Sujin used to come here with their mother on the last Sunday of every month, climbing the narrow stairs to the open rooftop where you could see a wide stretch of the Han River and the city stacked up on both banks. He had not been back in 2 years. He brought Patricia on a clear night in April when the air was cold but not unpleasant and the city below them was lit up in every direction. They sat at the corner table. He ordered japchae, the sweet potato noodles Sujin always got, without fail, every single time. When the bowl came, he didn't touch it right away. Patricia looked at him across the table. Then she looked at the bowl. The ring was resting on top of the noodles. Simple. A thin band. One small stone. Nothing loud. She looked back up at him. "You walked into my world," Manshik said, and the quiet stopped hurting. He didn't get to finish the sentence. "Yes," she said. Just that. Clear and immediate and certain, the same way she had looked at him across a ruined jacket on her very first night, like the answer had been obvious all along, and she was just waiting for the question. They got married on a Saturday in May. No grand venue. No hundreds of guests. Just the back room of Sura, cleared of its usual tables and filled instead with low light and the smell of Jay's cooking and maybe 30 people who actually mattered. Mr. Choi had pressed his best tablecloths. Someone had put small white flowers in glass bottles along the windowsills. It looked like the kind of wedding that would be easy to remember, not because it was big, but because everything in it was true. Jay cooked for 6 hours straight and cried for most of them. Not sad crying. The other kind, the kind that comes up unexpectedly, when something you didn't know you were hoping for actually happens. He sent dish after dish out of that kitchen. Gamjatang, japchae, grilled meat, soft tofu stew. The doenjang jjigae he had been perfecting for 2 years. Every plate was perfect. Nobody mentioned the occasional tear that may or may not have landed in the broth. Ryung gave a speech. It was one sentence. I told him to end it, and I have never been so glad that he didn't listen to me. The room laughed, genuinely, the kind that fills a space completely, and Ryung sat back down with the same neutral expression he always wore, as if he had not just said the warmest thing anyone had heard all night. Late in the evening, when the food was mostly gone and the conversation had softened and people were sitting close together the way people do when a night has been good, Patricia picked up her phone. She found the song. She had been learning the words for weeks. Korean lyrics written out phonetically in a notebook, practiced quietly in her apartment in the early mornings before work, corrected gently by Mrs. Beck on the 3rd floor who had heard her through the wall and knocked one morning to help without being asked. She pressed play and let the opening notes fill the room. Then she sang it. Quietly. Not perfectly. But fully. Every word. All the way through. Her voice low and careful and honest. The room went still around her the way rooms go still when something real is happening, and everyone present understands it without needing it explained. Manshik stood on that small dance floor and did not move. His eyes closed slowly. Patricia's hand came to rest against his chest. His tattooed hand came up and cradled the back of her head, gentle and certain, the way it looked in every quiet moment between them, like she was something he had not expected to be given and was not going to take lightly. He was crying. He didn't turn away. He didn't hide it. He just let it happen, standing still in the middle of that small warm room while Sujin's song moved through the air around them. Later, after everyone had gone, they sat together on the rooftop in Mapo. Souls spread out below them in every direction, lit and alive and completely indifferent, the way cities are. The Han River caught the light somewhere in the distance. The air was cool and clean. They sat close without speaking for a while. Then Manshik said quietly, "He would have liked you." Patricia leaned into his shoulder. "Tell me more about him," she said. And for the first time in 2 years, Manshik smiled. A real one, slow and unguarded. And he did. Moral. Here is the moral lesson of the story, kept short and clear. Grief is not loyalty. Manshik spent 2 years believing that feeling nothing was the same as honoring his brother. He confused going numb with being strong. He thought that closing himself off from love was a way of protecting the people around him. But all it really did was keep him alone inside a ritual that was slowly becoming a coffin. Patricia didn't save him by being extraordinary. She saved him by being ordinary, by treating him like a regular person at a time when everyone else treated him like a threat. She didn't flinch. She didn't perform. She just showed up Friday after Friday and refused to pretend the wall wasn't there. The real lesson is this. The people who change your life are rarely the ones who try to. They are the ones who simply refuse to leave you alone in your silence. And for Manshik, the bravest thing he ever did was not the warehouse rescue, or the wars he fought, or the empire he built. Woman with a napkin and no fear, and mean it. Sujin didn't need Manshik to stop living. He needed him to start again.